good evening and welcome to today's edition of the NSMQ Live Chat. My name is Anthony Benjamin Adiaba and I'll be your host for today. Today we are talking to one of our verified NSMQ legends. Her name is Dr. Yehoda Martei. She was with the Wesley Girls High School team from 1999 and they made it to the final. They were the first all-girls school to make it to the final. So Dr. Yehoda Martei, good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. So to get things going, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, you went to Gehe and you're a doctor and all that, but can you describe yourself in your own words for us?
Yeah, so actually I should say that the honor is really mine to be here and I'm glad to be invited like 20 plus years later. And so thank you. So briefly about myself. So my name is Yehoda Martei. I go by Yehoda or Martei, and usually I can tell how people know me and when they know me based on what they call me. So some people call me Yehoda, Martei, or Teki. It's all fair. I grew up in Accra and I don't think I'd ever left Accra until I went to Gehe. And so my mom is Ghana, my dad is Ghana. We just never left Accra, I guess. I went to Morning Star, and I think at the time, you know, my aspiration was really to go to Gehe. A lot of women that I knew who were accomplished and brilliant went to Gehe. I think our headmistresses at the time at Gehe as well, at Morning Star went to Gehe. And so, you know, when I got into Gehe, I was beyond thrilled. It was really exciting. And I should add, though, in case my mom hears this, she didn't go to Gehe, but she's like very smart and accomplished as well. But I went to Gehe, and obviously the icing on the cake for that was that I got to participate in the Brilliant Science and Maths quiz competition, as it was called then. And then from there, I went to the United World College of the Atlantic. So it's a boarding school in the UK. There's similar colleges around the world, but essentially the mission is to bring students from all over the world to study together as a way of promoting world peace through education. And it was a great experience for me. It was nothing I'd ever experienced. And then I moved to the US for college and medical school, and I've just stayed on since then. So I trained in the US. I went to Harvard for undergrad. I did my medical school training at Yale. And then I did residency training at University of California, San Francisco. And I'm here now at Penn. I did my fellowship in medical oncology year. I have stayed on, and I do sort of different things now in my current role. So I am part clinician as a clinical oncologist or medical oncologist, I guess we call it. And so I see patients who are admitted with cancer in the hospital, but then I also do research. A lot of my research is actually global focused. So I do a lot of work in Botswana, and I focus my work on breast cancer survival outcomes, and in particular, looking at vulnerable populations like patients who have HIV and have breast cancer as well. And what else? And I do some teaching as well. So I teach on the wards, I teach students, I teach interns, residents, fellows. I do research with trainees as well, and I mentor. So that's sort of my teaching role. And I guess we can go into some other details later, but that's pretty much the gist of it. In terms of my other life, I'm married. I have a son who's a toddler who keeps me busy. So it's sort of the full, you know, balancing life and work thing going for me now.
It sounds like it's such a, there's a lot going on. That's really
It is
impressive.
a juggling act. It is a juggling act.
But before we go on with the chat, what about your hobbies and like the things you do when you have some downtime? What defines you in that sense?
Yeah, so that is evolving. So I think it's evolved with the pandemic, and then it's evolved as I became a mom. But I would say I love dancing. I find it exhilarating. It's very freeing. So I love doing that. I love reading. It's sort of nice to get lost in fictional worlds, although I haven't read in a while. And then I love traveling. Also haven't done a lot of that with the pandemic, but I love experiencing other cultures. And my all-time favorite thing is I love eating. Okay, I know people are probably going to say, but everyone loves food. I love food. I love the experience of eating. I don't eat fast. I enjoy my meals. I love food. I feel like when I'm out of Ghana, the one thing I miss is the food. And then the second thing I miss is like the smell of street food. Like I absolutely love food. So, I mean, a lot of people could probably attest to that. I bet the Amaria Wache at a Denta can probably attest to that. But yeah, those are some of the things I love to do. A bit odd, but yeah.
I mean, who doesn't like food? But
no, I really love food. You could probably like sell me on anything with food.
I see. We'll keep that in mind. So straight in then to Brilliant Science and Maths Quiz 1999, or should I say NSMQ 1999. I recall that you dispatched the likes of Adesador College, I think St. Peter's SHS, Kumasi. Those are some of the schools you faced. Which moments in that quiz, like which moments in that period do you think of right now as your fondest memory from that whole period in your life?
So it's a while ago. I'm embarrassed to say. I think a lot of people, we've seen online, a lot of people probably remember a lot more than I do. I don't remember score lines. I don't really remember a lot of the teams that we met along the way, but I definitely remember the finals. And I just remember how momentous it was. It was just a great feeling to have made it that far. And so, I mean, I might be remembering this the wrong way, or I might be misled about my recollection on this, but I remember earlier on in the competition when we were training, we had a mock session with Portray and we got whipped. Like we got really whipped. I didn't even think we'd make it past stage, but we got that whipped. But I think it also set the bar high and just set a stage for, what we had to do and what we needed to do in order to, increase again or up our game. And so to be there at the finals with the same team that whipped us or really massacred us felt like an accomplishment in and of itself. So I think that part of it was great. I mean, people remember the scoreline. I don't remember the scoreline. I don't remember the margin. I just remember, it was disappointing for a brief moment, but it felt great. I felt like we had accomplished a lot. At the time, I didn't realize we were the first girls' school to get there. But I mean, in hindsight, now thinking about it, I think it was a great feeling, and we were pretty proud of ourselves. It was great to be on a team with Denise and Sharon, who I still keep in touch with, who are admirable people in their respective fields. And so that experience for me it's just one of the best experiences I had. And it was great doing it with incredible women or girls at the time. And then I should say the one name though that I remember from that quiz that wasn't on our team is Bune. And it's just out of respect. If you ask me about the one person from the quiz since it started, it would be Bubune. And it was because he was someone who came and was brilliant and performed at an excellent level and was just really passionate about the game. And I think just really at that point in the contest, I don't think I'd actually seen anyone who'd really performed at that level. And so really out of respect, I've never been in touch with me. I don't know him outside of the quiz, but just someone I had a lot of respect for. And so that's a memory from the quiz itself. The other memory, it's not really from the quiz, it was just the aftermath of the quiz. And so I got a lot of mail, like fan mail from people after the quiz. And, now it's easy to just go online and hit, love or, like a tweet or something like that. But these were people who know me from nowhere, but saw my performance in the quiz or our performance as a team on a quiz and actually, took a pen and paper and licked a stamp and mailed it to us just to say we inspired them. And so for me, just having that, and I was 17 or something then, I took it really lightly initially, but my dad really sort of impressed on me just what an honor it is for people to be in admiration of our team. And so the fan mail that came later on was just really inspiring and just humbling that, as a team of 3, we just thought we were doing the best we can, but then we actually impressed a whole lot of young girls. So those were my memories from the quiz. I don't think I remember any specific questions or any specific tense moments, if that's what you're looking for.
I mean, that was a very good answer already, because so for our fans tuning in, this is a conversation for all of us. So if you have any questions for Yehoda, you can just comment them and I will ask her for you. But we've had Denise on the show and we've had Buguni on the show as well. All of you guys are just very inspiring, if I should say so myself. So I guess I don't need to ask you who your favorite opponent was.
Yeah, that would be Bubune. That's a simple answer.
Okay, and you've already answered how you felt going to the final, but have you been following the quiz?
So unfortunately, I haven't been following it. And when I say I haven't been, I've been following the score line, right? So every now and then I know which teams are advancing. Obviously, I know when Gehe is always in the contest because I love my school, so I'm always watching that score line as well. But I haven't followed it very closely. I've seen, pictures and news articles on the line about how the quiz has now like a huge, national stage. And I saw the team that won last year did a tour, met the president and the ex-president. So I know, I know the contest is still living on. It's actually even bigger than it was during our time. But I haven't actually watched, like live episodes in a long time.
That's you can always catch up. And
Okay.
the telecast for last year's edition will be starting soon on Joy Prime and Joy News. So I'm sure our fans will be eager to find out more about that later. But back to the live chats with with Yehoda. I think now we want to talk about Gehe. It's one of the schools that, especially on Twitter, people just love to hate Gehe, and every time Gehe is competing, it's going to be juicy. What are some of your memories from Gehe that you'd like to share? Who was your favorite teacher? Who was your favorite spot on campus? What funny anecdotes can you share with us?
So I've had a lot of transformative experiences in my life. I think Gehe was like the first major one. I don't know why people love to hate Gehe because we love the world, we love people. But I would say Gehe, I just have a lot of fun. When I think about Gehe, I have a lot of fond memories from Gehe. I feel like that's where I grew into who I am today. I became confident because of Gehe. I got a solid foundation because of Gehe. So I love Gehe. I don't have any sort of specific fond memories. I just remember the third year was a really nice time to be in Gehe. So it's a bit of a long story, but I'll try to make it short. So we had a housing issue in Gehe with the seniors. There weren't enough beds for seniors or something like that. And so overflow housing was created. So it was like a little dorm above the sick bay. And we joke that it was the prefect rejects who were put there. So it was like 10 girls who were put there. But I feel like that was a place that was removed from the dormitories. And so there were no rules, there were no timeouts. And it was a place that I got to bond with a lot of the girls who were there and talk into the middle of the night and share our dreams and aspirations and, love lives and things like that. So that for me was a really nice part of being in Gehe the third year. I think third year was great for everyone anyway, but it was especially nice to be in sort of a different housing. The other thing about that was that it was located right next to the phone booth. And so this is a very long time ago. I would date myself. But when I was at Gehe, there was just one functioning phone booth for everyone, right? And so you really needed to be strategically positioned by the phone booth. So anyway, this place was really next to the phone booth, which meant, I could get first dips on the phone booth and my sister could as well. And the phone booth just had a lot of drama as well. You put a lot of people in line waiting for one phone booth. There's going to be a lot of drama and fights and quarrels. So it was just, I don't know, it's just an interesting experience in general. In terms of my favorite teacher, I would say Miss Haum Quagrin. So she was our math teacher. I want to say she was a Gehe alum as well, but I don't remember. But she was a math teacher. She was incredibly brilliant. She was no nonsense and she was confident. But I like the fact that she was really patient and not teaching us just math, but just teaching us as young girls how to be confident in our own position in society, right? And just sort of grow into ourselves. And for that reason, I just gravitated towards her and absolutely admire her, still admire her even to this day. My family members got to know her, my sisters know her, my mom, my dad, everyone knows her. And it just shows sort of, I think at that age, she was sort of one of the earliest role models I had of sort of young, assertive women. And so she was definitely one of my favorite teachers. I don't know if, I think, is that all you asked? I can't remember what the other question was.
The last one was your favorite spot on campus.
Oh, my favorite spot.
I'm guessing it has to do with food.
I'd say yeah, maybe, and just yeah, maybe something with food. But I would say, what else would I say? I'd say just like the phone booth. It was just nice to finally connect with the outside world. So I liked being able to get to the phone booth and call my family, and then also just catch up with people.
Okay, it sounds like you had a lot of fun at Gehe.
No, it was nice. I mean, I think third year was nice in general, and then first year was a little bit like I tried to join the cadet in the first year, and it was just like an awful experience. It wasn't awful because the cadet was awful. It was awful because I think I admired the cadet because it's just like they're disciplined and, they wake up early and so much precision. And it's just really, it's just like the highest level of discipline you can imagine. So I was like, I'm going to join the cadet. And I think I probably did it for like a month. And I was like, this is not for me. It's just like, I love to sleep in a little later. I love to color outside of the lines. And so, yeah, anyway. But yeah, it was a lot of fun outside of it. I think third year for most people was the most fun year of Gehe.
I mean, my third year in school was also the most fun for me, so I can relate to that.
Exactly.
So Prince Insia on Facebook says, wow, such an impressive biography. And he also has a question for
Thank you.
He says, how was your study outside as compared to Ghana? And how can we improve the academics in Ghana from your point of view? I think before you answer that, maybe we can talk a little bit about your studying in general, so your undergraduate study and then your medical school and all that. We can talk about that a little bit and then we can come back to how it compares to Ghana.
Yeah, that's a great question though. I feel like the first time I actually realized that I had to develop a strategy to actually study efficiently was in college. I just feel incredibly blessed. Like I feel like right up until college, I was just sailing on, things just came a little easy and I took it for granted. But it was really in college that I just realized I needed a strategy beyond just, it'll just come, And so I went to undergrad at Harvard. It was definitely a different experience. It was just being surrounded by people who, it was the first time in my life and that I just felt average, like I felt ordinary. And it was a humbling experience. And I think it was a great experience to have that. I think for the most part, I just sort of did okay and sailed through things. And it was the first time that I realized it was just like average and I had to really study hard to keep up. And so it was a great experience for me. I was pre-med in college, meaning that I was already determined at that point I wanted to do medicine. But getting towards the end of my fourth year, I just realized that I hadn't actualized for myself what it meant to do medicine. Like I didn't have any meaningful clinical experience to guide this decision or this desire to be in medicine. And so I took 2 years off where I worked with a surgical oncology group, so like a cancer group for mainly surgeons. And that was when I realized, I wanted to do oncology. Prior to that, I wanted to do medicine, but it was just really vague. I just didn't have any meaningful experience. I didn't know what my contributions in medicine would be. I didn't know what particularly excited me about medicine. And after I took time off to do that, I realized, I just wanted to do oncology. I wanted to do cancer research because I wanted to do clinical work and research. And the reason being that I like the multidisciplinary care for that. And so a lot of medicine tends to be siloed, like someone does cardiology and they do it alone, and someone does GI and they do it alone. But with cancer care, you need a radiation oncologist, you need a surgeon, you need physical therapist, you need social work, you need medical oncology. So there's just this like multidisciplinary care, which for me was exciting. It meant that you could be in a specialty field, but still get to interact with your colleagues. The thing that I also liked was that the research was evolving. And so the way we treat patients like 10 years ago, it's totally different from what we do now. And it meant that patients were getting better care and living longer. And so, at that stage, I decided I was going to do oncology. The question about medicine versus surgery came later. I just realized, surgery didn't really excite me. I didn't like the lifestyle and I like the thinking aspect of medicine. So I ended up doing medicine at Yale. And at the time I knew I wanted to do medical oncology. And then I went into fellowship training. After residency, I did a formal research master's because I realized I wanted to do research as part of the work that I do. And yeah, I think that's it with my education. In terms of how different it is, I would say that up until I started college, I really didn't have a sense of how you synthesize data, right? I think a lot of, and even the brilliant science and maths quiz, a lot of how we study, like through JSs, elementary school JSs and SSs, is a lot of chew and pour, right? It's just like you memorize. It favors those with photogenic memories, but you don't really have to like take data and synthesize it, right? It's a different level of thinking, and I didn't have that skill set until I got to college, or even I think maybe I did a little bit in Atlantic College, but developing that skill set like helped me in college, and it's definitely a skill set that continues to help me in medicine. And so I'd say that's, I guess maybe that's the main difference. I think, you know, doctors in the US and in Ghana are equally and highly well trained, but I think there's a certain level of thinking and, you know, digesting information and synthesizing it that is a little bit unique to the US system of education.
Okay, so Prince, I hope your question has been answered. We have comments from Effie Grant, who says, my fondest memory of Matiki was when she took me under her wings, giving me chemistry lessons in the special house above the sick bay.
Oh yes, the sick bay. Oh, thank you. That is a nice memory. Thank you for sharing that.
So we also have a question here from Ikua, who says, we have a question from James Jabez Ato Amamu, who says, what is your greatest source of inspiration and motivation?
So I think, you know, depending on different parts of my inspiration comes, you know, I think I feel just, first of all, I should say I'm just incredibly privileged and blessed to be where I am and to have had the opportunities I have. In terms of what I do, I mean, family life, you know, my family just inspires me every day. But from a work perspective, so the patients that I see inspire me, and especially the patients that I see when I am in Botswana or different parts of Africa. I mean, getting a cancer diagnosis is just like a lot of, I can't even imagine just how much it turns your life upside down. And to do that and get that diagnosis in a system or in a country where there are fewer resources to care, and where there are a lot of challenges with accessing care, is just huge. And so for me, just being able to see patients in the clinic who are diagnosed with cancer, but then do better and come back later and say they went to their, you know, their daughter's wedding and they danced and send me thank you notes. I feel like that's what makes it meaningful for me. And that's what inspires me to continue to do the research that I do with a global focus. And so I don't know if that's, you know, the question being asked, but that's part of my inspiration from a work perspective.
Yeah, it sounds like the work in itself is a reward for, that's very heartwarming.
Thank you.
So for our fans who are still tuning in, this is the NSMQ live chat. We are talking to Dr. Yehoda Martei from Wesley Girls 1999. We made it to the finals, and the first and one of the two all-girls schools that have been to the final. I'm sure that will come up later in the conversation. So now I want to ask more about the work you currently do. I know that you mentioned that you're a researcher and you're also a clinician, and I noticed that you're also a vice chief of diversity, inclusion, and health equity. So I wanted to hear more about that in particular, and how all these different jobs fit into your life on a daily basis.
Yeah, so I think it's part of being in academic medicine that you end up doing different things. But I think they're sort of all aligned for me. So, I mean, the clinical work I do is related to cancer, and I do that both here in the US and in Botswana. I keep saying Botswana, but I haven't actually been in Botswana since the pandemic began. And so, but I used to spend a lot more time in Botswana. And then I told you a little bit about my teaching role as well as the research that I do. So in terms of my administrative role and, DI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that is a role that I recently I recently joined that. I recently acquired that role, and it's really focused on how we increase diversity and promote health equity in cancer care and inclusion within our division at Penn. And so, just in terms of statistics, people might not realize just how, I mean, the oncologist shortages like worldwide. But when you consider the US population and you consider the proportion of oncologists that are Black, there are only, I think, 3% of oncologists in the whole United States that are Black. And so that is very underrepresented compared to the population of Blacks in the US. And then it's the same with other underrepresented minority groups, so Hispanic. So we do know that when we have concordance and when we have more diversity in our faculty members and clinical roles, that patients actually get better outcomes. And so part of my role is thinking about strategies to enhance that pipeline. So how do we promote more diversity of staff, clinician roles, research roles within cancer, and then also looking at cancer disparities that exist within the US itself. So I talked about global disparities and how I focus on breast cancer disparities in Africa, but even within the US, within different racial groups, there are disparities in outcomes. And so looking at those outcomes and thinking about strategies to mitigate that. So that's where that focus is. So I do a little bit, it's like a percentage here and there. Invariably, it ends up adding up to more than 100%, but these are sort of the different roles in which I currently work.
Still, so far, just everything you say is just impressive. Wow, impressive.
Oh,
wow,
thank you.
Impressive, wow. You're doing so many great things around the world. It's nice to have such a role model. Effie Grant has another question. She says, how do you plan to help us in Ghana in the early diagnosis and treatment of cancer?
So I feel like a lot of my work that I do, I think the cancer problem in general is a huge one. It can seem daunting when you think about sort of the big divide between cancer presentation and treatment in Ghana versus the rest of the world, or in high income countries. A lot of my work that I do now is based in Botswana. And it's looking at how we increase access to care, how we increase guideline concordant care delivery. And it's not directly in Ghana. I've been hoping that the footprint of the research work I do is generalizable to other countries. So I'm hoping it's the sort of research work that generates results that other countries can look at and replicate to improve cancer care for women worldwide. And so especially like thinking about breast cancer patients. But I think, the similarities between countries like Botswana and other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And so, yeah, although I'm not physically directly in Ghana, I'm hoping that, the work that I do is not really limited to the boundaries of Botswana, but can actually improve cancer care beyond, Botswana and maybe in Ghana. And I should add, one of my early mentors in oncology is a Ghanaian oncologist, Dr. Van der Poy, who is amazing and doing amazing work in research. She's a tour de force. She's based in Ghana, and she was one of my early mentors in a project that I actually did in Ghana, looking at barriers to presentation. So I have done some work in Ghana, and I think I definitely have a long road ahead of me, and I'm hoping that, along the road, the more oncologists who are trained from Ghana, who are Ghanaians who are based there, but I hope my work can also have an impact in terms of, how my work is then generalized and adapted to other settings.
So, I mean, how did I don't say decision to work in do research in Botswana come about? Was it a random thing, or is there a particular connection you have with Botswana?
No, I actually, I hadn't been to Botswana. I didn't actually know the exact location of. I knew it was in Southern Africa, so it wasn't like a desire to be in Botswana. I was staying on at Penn as faculty, and actually as a fellow even at Penn. I realized Penn had this 20-year history with Botswana, doing mostly HIV research. They already had the infrastructure on the ground. they had systems in place, they knew, the lay of the land and how to navigate it. And so it just seemed like an easier transition to just build on something that was already there and do breast cancer work. I also think that Botswana is, it's a country that has universal health coverage for cancer and HIV and everything else, really. They pay for surgery, chemo drugs. And so it's just, I guess, an easier setting to study some of the, questions that I had related to treatment delivery. But most importantly, I think the number one reason was really that there was already the infrastructure in place. It was like 20 years old. It was tried and true. And so it was just easy to build upon that. Also, as junior faculty, I can't really come and, I needed to be able to be in a place where I can help, but also thrive and be able to publish my research. And Botswana just sort of was at the intersection of, having the resources and then also having the know-how. And so it was easy for me to transition and actually work in Botswana.
So I guess it's the cliche of when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah, something like that. I'd say that.
So we have another comment from Senior Joseph Nanwa. He says that that's a great presentation. Please, what is the way forward for you in your current role as an oncologist, and what excites you about medical research? Where do you stand in translational research in oncology? So I guess those are two questions.
Yeah, so just to answer the latter one, I don't do translational research, so I don't actually, I think I might not be understanding the translational research question. I think what excites me about research is that you get to ask questions about things that seem unusual, about things that are not normal, about things that you'd like to change, and then you can design experiments to answer that. And sometimes the experiments create revolutionary answers that change care forever, and sometimes they don't. But I think the learning process of research is what excites me. And it's a bit of a creative process, right? I'm not an artist or anything. But there's a creativity that comes with research and being able to think about a bigger problem and dissect it and think about the different ways in which different parts act together. And so I just like going to the drawing board and think about, how to design trials or how to design research proposals to answer some of the questions that I'm excited about. I would definitely like to see a higher focus of research on implementation side. So there's a lot of, the number of new cancer medicines that have been approved in the last decade is enormous. It's an endless list, right? And I think that in order to see the real impact of these innovations and newer medicines, it needs to translate into clinical care. Patients need to be able to get the care that they need with these new drugs. And the gap we see is really going from a drug has been approved to access. Does the average patient now get this drug? So there's that access question in the US. And then there's a bigger access question, in Africa and other countries, in low and middle income countries, is whether patients actually get it at the point of care. And so thinking about how research translates from the clinical sort of well-controlled space into clinical practice is implementation science. And it's sort of where I want to position myself in thinking about how we translate the new discoveries into clinical care for patients at the point of care, and how we have true and meaningful impact is what I'd say.
Great. I think Gertrude Ade Tennyson Razak has my response. She says, Mateki, we are proud of you, especially S1 girls. Keep soaring and making us proud. So,
well, I should give a shout out to Gertrude. I remember Gertrude very fondly.
So, Senior Joseph, thank you for your question, and Gertrude, thank you for your comments. We have another question from Prince Cynthia. He wants to know, can she please advise a young researcher as to how to become a better researcher? I guess I don't know if you want to take that or.
Yeah, it's hard to say without specifics, but I would say find a really good mentor. You have to find a really good mentor. I actually should have said this. I wouldn't be where I am without my mentors. It's incredible just how rewarding it is to have a mentor who's dedicated to you. And so I'd say, if you want to, you could get formal research skills, but I think more importantly, it's like have a good mentor. Like I have incredible mentors. I didn't want to do a research master's. I was just done with school. I was tired. Medical training takes forever. But my mentor was like, if you want to do this, you have to trade. And I spoke to another mentor who said the same thing. And then like, it felt like, dragging me through it. But once I started, I was like, this is awesome. I am glad someone sat me down and said, you really needed to do this and you'd benefit from it. So I'd say, find a good mentor.
So Prince, I guess the simplest advice you can get is find a good mentor.
Yeah, find a great one. And you should interview a few. I mean, the first mentor isn't like the first person you talk to, like interview 10, 15. I don't know. I interviewed like 15 people and found my mentorship team. So yeah.
So be intentional about who you choose as your mentor.
Yes, intentionality is everything. Thank you. That is very well put.
Okay, so we are still talking about the work you do. I know you've done some work with the World Health Organization. I know you have some publications and stuff out there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I sort of stumbled into this area. So a lot of my initial work was looking at, so the WHO publishes this list of essential medicines. They basically like a prescriptive list of medicines that they think every country should have to address the healthcare needs of its population. And there's a list for cancer. And so my initial work was really looking at this list and thinking about how many countries actually incorporate this list, because realizing that cancer is becoming a prominent issue in Africa and a lot of low and middle income countries, but it's really not as talked about as infectious diseases. And so my initial work in Botswana was just realizing that there isn't even, like, even when medicines are listed on an essential medicines list, there isn't like a sustainable supply of these medicines. Medicines go out of stock all the time. And it's just really stressful on patients and also potentially harmful to their care. And so a lot of the initial work that I started doing was just looking at these essential medicines list, looking at to what extent they were incorporated on national essential medicines list, mostly in Africa, but I've done work with other people looking at sort of a more global landscape of these medicines for pediatric cancers and for adult cancers. And so I think in that regard, I have worked, I was on the committee that helped with the selection of the 2017 medicines. And so I've worked, sort of had ins and outs through this work on the WHO essential medicines. And it's something that, I think still becomes a prominent problem, especially now that a lot of the medicines on that list are newer targeted medicines on patent, super expensive, would probably cost, more than someone's salary in Ghana to buy for a month. And so thinking about, issues related to that, what are the systems that can be put in place to make sure these drugs are more affordable to patients, to decrease the financial toxicity. So that's another dimension of work I've done in the past. But that, I think it wasn't anything I knew about previously or had thought about intentionally previously, but I just stumbled into a situation. And I think that's the exciting part of research, right? You stumbled into a situation, you're like, this doesn't make sense, or this should be different. Why isn't it? And then, you design questions to answer that. So that's my work in that arena. In terms of publications, I think just by mere fact of being a researcher, you have to publish. We say publish or perish. And so, I do have to publish to remain relevant. But I also publish really to share the findings of the research I do. So whether they're positive or negative, like I think part of the requirement of being a part researcher is that I have to publish. So I do have a few publications to that regard, working on more publications. But yeah, it's part of what I do. Thankfully, I enjoy writing. So it's been a somewhat painless process. And sometimes it's exciting to be able to write down your research results.
See, so a lot to take in, but also it's impressive how you're talking about making cancer medicines more accessible, both in the US and sub-Saharan Africa and like low and middle income countries in general. So it's quite impressive the work you're doing right now.
Thank you.
Edward Oting wants to know, do you see any link between cancer care and mental health?
So, I mean, I think there are established links between, being diagnosed with cancer and mental health issues. So I think there is a link there. I think not really sort of mental health directly related, but there are also very well-known links between cancer and stigma in a lot of societies. And so that's a big issue. So I think cancer and mental health, that is, I don't know if there's a specific question, but yeah, there are links between a cancer diagnosis or just really going through cancer treatment and mental health. And it's something that, unfortunately, I think, either it's not screened for or picked up late, but a lot of clinics will have screening tools for depression during cancer care, like once you're diagnosed and during treatment, and people do have to go either get therapy or be on antidepressants during treatment. It's tough time. So I think there is sort of the, part of it is a normal reaction, but then there's a point where it becomes sort of depression and you have to treat it as it is. And so there are established links that are well known between cancer and mental health.
So, Edward, there are established links.
Sorry, I feel like I'm not answering the question satisfactorily, but I don't know, there might be like a hidden, I might be missing something else, but if he replies back, let me know.
Sure, I will. But I think the answer was sufficient. It's cancer is definitely, it's a physical thing, but there's also a mental health aspect, and it's families go through a lot, and like the patients themselves. So
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned family actually. So it's not even just like the patient who's diagnosed, it's just like the mental well-being of caregivers as well. And sometimes it can't even exceed that of the, it seems unfair to say that, but caregivers actually have to deal with a lot of the pressure and the burden of a cancer diagnosis as well.
I'm just grateful that there are researchers like you out there in the world trying to make their burdens a little less. So I guess I have another question from Facebook. This takes us back to girls' schools and the NSMQ.
Okay.
This question is from Ekua. She says, what significant steps do you think girls' schools can take, or what changes can they make to help them win the NSMQ?
You know what, actually, to be honest, I think, not to discount any team that has won, but I really think it's about gaming the system, right? I don't think it's about IQ. I think everyone, by the time you're nominated from your school, I think you're already like, you're done. You're like, you're very capable and very intelligent, like to be nominated as 1 of 10 or, out of a class of 300 or 500 or, I don't know the size of the class. I think you already have the intellectual capacity and capability to make it. I think it's just really mastering the quiz itself. And so I would say, just talking from the gay perspective, and I could be remembering this wrongly, I think a lot of boys' schools that pick participants right from when you enter, and it's just like, we're going to sharpen you and you're going to do this quiz and you're going to perform. And like everything else, you do better with practice. Gehe didn't have that emphasis. And like, someone might ask, should they? I don't know. I don't think so. I think there's the goal of, getting a more holistic education. And I feel like Gehe feels like it doesn't have anything to prove. And so we do get time to study for the quiz. But I think it was just like a very short time compared to what people have. I think we had very limited time to study. There were people who had transcripts from all the quiz. Like they knew, they've watched every single quiz from I don't know when. Someone was reading 1999 riddle number 2. Like, the people who had transcripts and had mastered it and had studied patterns and knew what cues to look out for. And we didn't devote as much time. And I don't know if, that's a wrong strategy or not. I think if you're a school that's smaller and you feel like you have a lot to prove, maybe you should put in that effort and it's worthwhile and it increases your visibility. I feel like I'm going to say something wrong with this, but I think it's not a capability issue. I think everyone can do it. I think it's like a game. People play video games. The more you play, the better you get at it. And I feel like the quiz is the same thing, especially with like riddles and just things that are not they really focus on how sharp you can think. I think we select people based on intellect, and really when it comes to what we need is the training aspect, is like, how do you really sharpen people to be, killers at this quiz? And I don't know about other girls' school, but I know Gehe, we're not picking people right from when you enter and saying you're going to like spend extra hours every day on the quiz. And so, yeah, I think it's a difference in strategy. But I think it'll be coming soon. I don't know if it's going to be Gehe that wins it. If it is, that'll be great. But if it's another girls' school too, yay, more power to women. So I'm totally in favor of girls' school winning, but I feel like people shouldn't beat themselves too hard, because it doesn't mean that girls' schools are not as good. We're just not prioritizing it from like a training perspective. And I don't know, maybe I feel like that might not be, I don't know. I feel like some people might come for me with that answer, but that's how I view it, really. I think it's a difference in training, but I think, in terms of intellect, like we're equally qualified to, at that stage.
Personally, I agree with you. So...
Thank you very much, Anthony. That is all the endorsement I need.
Yeah, so I hope, again, I feel like I keep saying this, I hope your question has been answered. So we have another question from David. I feel like I should pronounce the Sikafo. So David Sikafo wants to know, apart from medicine and related programs you read in school, what other life skills did you incorporate in your journey?
So other life skills in my journey, I'm not really sure. No, I think maybe being, I read a lot growing up. My dad reads a lot. He's in favor of and when I say reading, not textbooks. I mean, I'm ashamed to say a textbook sometimes had typos and things, but just like reading to open your mind. And I feel like because I read a lot, I had a very broader, like I just have more, I'm not conservative in my thinking. I'm just more open in my thinking, but I think it also helps me in terms of thinking outside the box with research. I also sort of along the way have had opportunities to speak publicly. So I think I do better with public speaking or speaking in front of a crowd. And also I just raised at a time and in Gehe where, you're taught to be confident and be confident in who you are. So I've just never been afraid to speak up, but I think it's also helped me realize new opportunities and to step into newer territories and stretch, beyond my current roles and things like that. I was thinking there would be a more fun answer like, oh, I learned to play soccer, then I use soccer to do research, but no, I don't have that answer.
Well, I think from what you said, what I'm getting from it is that reading allowed you to like keep your curiosity up and still be informed about other parts of the world apart from what you were studying in school. So yeah, I guess that's a life skill.
Thank you for paraphrasing that. That sounds better than I said it. Thank you.
So back to my questions. I guess my remaining question now is the future plans. And I know as a researcher, you're going to probably publish more books, more research, engage in more research. But apart from that, is there some big thing that we can hear about? Are there some plans behind the scenes that we need to know about? What's next for Yehoda?
Yeah, I should say though that it's a bit anticlimactic because that is still in the works. I just realized that, being a new mom and sort of balancing that with, so that is evolving. I'm definitely excited. I think there are sort of new exciting things I want to explore, but that's definitely in the works. Like you said, I definitely want to grow in research. I want to mentor more young people. And then in the US, I'm thinking about a specific role. I really want to be able to, in a meaningful way, enhance that pipeline to increase minority representation in academia and in cancer research and cancer faculty leadership, and just really in cancer care all along, all through the ranks. And so I think I have a broader vision of seeing sort of equity in terms of cancer care. The role I play and how I get there, I think is still in evolution and trying to figure out what my current priorities are and how I align them. And so it's a bit anticlimactic, but I'm working on it. So, I know you don't invite people back, but if you watch I was going to say my space, but I don't really have a space, but maybe if you watch my LinkedIn, I would update it at some point. But yeah, it's in the works. I think I definitely want to grow. I think it's great to be able to grow and evolve constantly. And so we'll see what comes out of it.
So growth and more growth is what we should be expecting. That's great.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say do you. So what is your message for our next set of NSMQ contestants and to our fans in general? What is your general message? Do you have any message you want to share with the world? We are giving you our platform to
thank you.
Share your message.
So first of all, I should say that I really think it's amazing that the NSMQ has made science pretty cool. I think when you went to school, if you liked studying and you were a science nerd, then you were a nerd. But it's great to see how the quiz over time has elevated science. And I think it's also important for young girls to realize that they have a place in this. I don't think we have to win the quiz to establish that or to prove that to anyone. And it's an enjoyable experience. I don't know, what the actual behind the scenes look like now, but I think if you're selected in whatever school you go to represent, I think it's a huge honor. It's a fun experience. And so I think at that point, just consider yourself a winner. And the rest of it is just coming on the quiz, meeting people who challenge you in different ways and having a lot of fun. And so I would say, it's great to see all the support. I was online and saw the Twitter feed you guys create. Like, it's amazing that people remember that much from 20 years ago. But I think it's humbling. I am incredibly humbled that people remember this much. And people sent me personal messages, and every now and then I run into people who are like, I remember you from the quiz. And so that I think the support that fans have for the quiz is huge. And I think it's huge because it tells the country and it tells young people that we value science and we value women in science. And so I think it's great. I would love to see a girls team win, but no pressure. I think, just go there and do you. And I think everyone is a winner at this point.
So the message is have fun, no pressure.
Yes.
Great. You already gave some of your mates shout outs, but are there particular people you want to give shout outs? We've talked to Denise in the past, so Denise Chum and Sharon Owusudapo, who were part of your team.
Yeah.
But are there other people, your trainers, your teammates, are there other people you want to just give
I think it's a really long list of people, and so I don't want to run into the temptation of leaving anyone out and pissing anyone off. But I think just the team. So I think we were 10 finalists, and that team of women, like really, I don't think they even need a shout out. Like everyone is doing amazing things in their world, in their corner. A lot of the women are in science now, or either medical doctors or surgeons, or doing research in different, groups. Well, I should say a lot of them, I think, are also in the US. And so, I think, they don't need shout outs, but definitely they made the experience a great experience, and they're an inspiring group of women now. And I totally love having them in my squad.
Oh, we love having you on our live chat. So thank you for joining us today, Yehoda.
Thank you, Anthony.
Fun conversation. Once again, this is the NSMQ live chat, where every 2 weeks we talk to some of the brilliant minds that have been on the NSMQ throughout the years. Today, we spoke to Dr. Yehoda Martei, who is an oncologist and a hematologist, and also a global health researcher, among other things. And I've had a lot of fun chatting with her. Join us again on April 7th when we host Dr. Alan Stildazi from the Infantipim 1996 team. Once again, my name is Anthony Benjamin Adiaba, and thank you once again for joining. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.